On this episode of Still Loading, Mario! That was awful. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Still Loading. Thank you all once again for tuning in. I hope you're having a great day. So this week's episode, what I am talking about is Luigi's Mansion, and for this week, I brought my friend Vin on. Vin, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, man?
Now, for those who remember, Vin was on the podcast once before for DuckTales, back when I was doing the 40 for 40 series. So it's been a while. It's been a while since you've been on. So what have you been playing lately? What have you been up to in your gaming life since then? I mean, I guess that was like 2 years. So I guess
it's been a while. I've been playing the remaster Link's Awakening. I'm pretty much at the end of that, but for some reason I just don't want to beat it, and I don't know why.
Well, it's because it's such a good game.
I actually started playing Animal Crossing on the GameCube again.
Yeah,
which is it's funny that you're playing Luigi's Mansion, because I like busted out my GameCube and I was like, you know what, I really want to mess around like with Animal Crossing, so I started playing Animal Crossing again, playing Battlefield 5 and Team Fortress because of all the Blizzard stuff going on. There's a lot of like Team Fortress, pro Team Fortress stuff happening.
Yeah, I was actually always Team Fortress because this is kind of a dumb weird opinion, but like when Overwatch came out and everyone was like obsessed with it, I'm like, Team Fortress was there first.
Well, the thing is like,
I know it's different. It's completely different.
Well, the thing is like I used to play. Oh my god! Like I had. Let me see. I can see how many hours I have on Team Fortress. I played the ever-living hell out of Team Fortress, and there was a point where I just kind of got the thing with me and and this is like such a tangent at the beginning of the podcast.
I started off with just seeing what you've been playing lately. We'll dive into Luigi's Mansion. Don't worry.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I have 1,703 hours on record of Team Fortress. So I played so much of it, and their updates after a while were so frustrating with like microtransactions and stuff like that. I think a lot of people just got kind of sick of Team Fortress, and because there was no professional back then. There was no professional league or support from Valve to help the TF2 community, like get an actual league. A lot of it was just like community run stuff. A lot of people jumped shipped over to Overwatch because Blizzard was throwing so much money into it for the events and all that.
Okay, I did not know that actually.
But yeah, like recently, like for the meme, I went back to Team Fortress because of everything happening, with Blizzard and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, let me boot up Team Fortress and see like just what the community's doing, and the Halloween event's going on right now, so it's actually a really fun time to get back into it because they have all the Halloween community maps, and it's a lot of nostalgia. I mean, right now it's just a lot of nostalgia for me from like GameCube, TF2 from like years and years ago, and what else? That's pretty much it. I'm just waiting for Luigi's Mansion to come out end of the month.
The Luigi's Mansion 3 with Gooigi, the champion of the people.
And just like I'm just getting stuff for the Switch. Money's a little tight, so I've had to skip some titles. I wanted to get Demon X Machina.
I heard that was good.
I've been playing a little bit of Astral Chain. I got like halfway through Astral Chain.
That also I heard was like getting a lot of good reviews. Money's been tight too for me, so I haven't really been able to get anything new. There's
a lot coming out for the Switch that I want, but I've been having to get real selective, like the Collection of Mana, all those games, and there was like something else. There's like a couple Japanese titles that I need to look into too that we aren't getting like an English translation.
And all I've really been playing on mine, I've just been playing WoW Classic.
Yeah, you're a WoW guy.
I've been hooked on it.
Oh man, a lot of my old guild mates were asking if I was going to go back. I said absolutely not.
15. It's a lot better than retail. I'm not gonna. I actually logged into retail for the first time in a while because like you don't need to buy a separate game for WoW Classic.
It's all the same account.
It's all the same account, right, which is nice. It's not like it's not like it's an expansion. So they put it on there, and I was like, all right, well, I haven't played retail in forever. Let me download the full retail version since I already own it anyway and see what's different.
Right.
And holy shit, I don't know what to do anymore. It's so different from the last time I played, which was like 4 years ago.
I haven't played since Cataclysm launch.
That's about same for me.
And
I played Pandaria.
All I experienced was like the first zone, and I hated it. It was like the underwater, because I played the Horde, and it was like the underwater area, and I absolutely hated it. And then my internet got cut off, and I was like, you know what, that's fine.
No, not worth it.
I have no interest in this game.
I ended up liking their questing styles in after Cata, because they like kind of figured out how to make it a little bit more like varied and unique.
Yeah.
But then they took away all the fun individualistic stuff of all the different classes, the things that would make all the classes different. They all feel the same now.
Okay.
But anyway, so we are here today, like I said before, to talk about Luigi's Mansion. And Luigi's Mansion, for those who remember it, is a game that came out for the GameCube back on November 18th, 2001. Actually, we're pretty close to the 18th anniversary of that. I wasn't planning on that, but it kind of worked out that way. So it came out on, like I said, Nintendo GameCube on November 18th, 2001. The director of the game was Hideki Kono, and produced by Shigeru Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka. There's different directors and producers for the 3DS version, but we're only talking about the GameCube one right now. Composers is Kazumi Totaka and Shinobu Tanaka. And yeah, so that's just a little bit of a rundown. Obviously, people know who Shigeru Miyamoto is. Not a lot of people might know who Takashi Tezuka is. Those who kind of follow video game history might, but he's the guy. He was the director of Super Mario World. Mm-hmm. He's been like pretty much the Mario guy since Miyamoto, or he was the Mario guy since Miyamoto kind of got promoted up and out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I just want to make sure that I was correct with that. He's been working on a lot. Like, he was the assistant director for the original Super Mario Brothers. Takashi Tezuka was. He was the assistant director for Mario 64. He was the director, I was right, for Super Mario World, Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, and Yoshi's Island. So he was like the head guy for all of those games. So it's got a pedigree.
Yeah.
So yeah, Luigi's Mansion, I guess to kind of start off with what I want to talk about this is, I remember there was a little bit of backlash when this game first came out, because the first Mario game, usually Nintendo systems came with a Mario game. Mm-hmm. You know, you had Super Mario Brothers for the NES, you had Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo, you had Mario 64 for the N64. But for the GameCube, the launch Mario game wasn't a Mario game, it was Luigi. And I remember that caused a little bit of a backlash in the community. And then when everyone finally got their Mario game, it was Sunshine, which is a little bit more loved now, but on release it was not liked.
I feel like that's just the overall experience of the GameCube, is that it got so much pushback from so many people, and now years later everybody's like, oh yeah, that was a good system.
I like the GameCube. I think my only beef with it is that there's not a lot of good games, but the games that are good are like fantastic. Like, I'm talking about quantity, not quality. And that's not indicative of the system. It's not their fault.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was really the era that began the trend of Nintendo doesn't have any third-party support. That was like where that argument kind of started from, because of the whole transition into CDs.
I mean, they had Resident Evil 4, but that's no longer an exclusive technically.
Yeah, I mean,
that went to PS2 later.
I mean,
on.
if we're gonna talk about the GameCube, I mean, my GameCube library is fairly big. Yeah. I mean, I would say second to my Switch library, which is huge because of how many games come out for the Switch. But
Nintendo has third-party support now. The Switch has been huge.
For sure. And I think, like, going back to this, what I was saying is, like, you know, everybody was like, oh, well, the GameCube's, like, it's not that great, it's not that powerful, this, that, and the other. But, like, it had so many good games, and, like, excluding first-party games, I have a pretty big collection of like, at least like third-party games. Like Capcom like supported it pretty well.
Beautiful Joe was on the GameCube, right?
Yeah,
I've been meaning to play those. I haven't played them yet.
They're great games. Both Beautiful Joes are on there. I mean, they're no longer exclusives, but they
were exclusive at the time. So like, I still count Resident Evil 4 and Beautiful Joe for that, because that was an exclusive thing for a while.
But then also the GameCube had the Resident Evil 0. It had Resident Evil 1 remake. It had all of them. It had 0 through 4. There was like they had the Tales games, which I see you have.
Symphonia.
Yeah, which was an amazing game. And there was there's a game called Freedom Fighters that was really good. It had some really good games.
I'm gonna have to check some of this out.
Also, like even like first,
we'll have to do an obscure GameCube games episode. That would be
Cubivore would be great for that. Have you ever played Cubivore?
No, I've never even heard of it.
Cubivore was.
We'll do an episode for it. So Luigi's Mansion, like I said, it was originally like not because the game was bad, but it was originally not even panned by critics. It's just it wasn't what people expected. It wasn't what people expected. They wanted a Mario game, and they kind of got one, but not really. And what they got was Luigi's Mansion, which I actually just beat in 2 days in preparation for this episode. It is a short game, but a very, very good game. And that's also coming from someone who doesn't have any nostalgia tied to this. I found myself because it's hard for me now to play a game more than like an hour or 2 hours before I get like antsy and I have to like my legs get a little stiff. I have to stretch them out because I'm not young anymore. But I actually found myself just sitting and I played this all morning in preparation for this recording. It was so good.
You know what I think it is? Like, because I didn't play this when I was younger. Like, I really didn't start expanding my library until. So this was generation 4 of the consoles?
I think so. I think
because it's like NES, SNES, N64, GameCube. I think really people started counting since NES era. Right?
No, so the actual first generation, it's weird. It's a lot more than you expect.
Yeah,
I think the Atari 2600 is the second generation. Believe it or not.
Really? Because
I'm gonna look it up while we're talking.
I mean, I might be wrong, but I feel like a majority of people, at least our age, don't consider anything before the NES to be like the start of the.
I consider
generational.
I consider counts. At least the Atari 2600.
Right.
So okay, the first generation was 1972 to 77, and that was pretty much the big one for that was the Magnavox Odyssey, which isn't very popular. Not a lot of people even know. I don't even know any specifics about that console. I've never even
heard of it.
I've heard of it. It was the first. Was it the first cartridge-based console? I think it might have been. I'd have to research that. So anyone who's mad at me for not knowing that off the top of my head, sorry. Yeah. Atari 2600 was the second generation, 76 through 83. NES was 83 through 87. 83 only because it originally came out in Japan in 83.
Right.
Super Nintendo / Genesis is 87 through 93. Genesis was a couple years, it was at least a year or two before the SNES, which is weird for me to think about. Fifth generation is PS1, N64, and Saturn. Sixth generation is Dreamcast, PS2, GameCube, and Xbox.
So this is technically the sixth generation?
The sixth generation, which is so weird to think. Because like you said, you would think it's the third because fourth, NES, Super Nintendo.
But we had 2 generations before that.
Two generations before that.
Well, so going back to that point is I didn't start expanding my GameCube library until the 360 and the PlayStation 3 and the Wii were out. So I worked at GameStop at the time and I had a GameCube and I was like, I had a 360 and I was at that point, GameCube was on its way out and everything was on sale. So I was just buying up games. Luigi's Mansion being one of them. And so I didn't play it until, I want to say 2010, 2011.
So like 9 years after it came out.
Yeah. And I think I had the same experience kind of that you had. It's like when you play it, you sit down and you just kind of get in, you end up like kind of like getting enveloped in it. And I think it's because of the way, it's not even like just like the gameplay. It's the overall atmosphere of the game, I think, is really what pulls you in.
The art design, the art direction in general is really nice in this. The graphics are pretty appealing.
Yeah, they look great even now.
They look pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I think the thing that they talk about this on another podcast I listen to called Retronauts, the sound design is really, really good in this game.
Yeah.
Specifically, they have like kind of like the same theme. If you notice it, they have the same theme in the entire game, like going through the entire mansion.
Yeah, it's the whole like... it's the Luigi's Mansion theme.
But the thing is that it never feels old because depending on what's happening, it changes how it's being played. So like if it's in a if like you've like freed a zone of ghosts, if you've wiped out all the ghosts in an area, then Luigi's whistling the tune. Mm-hmm. If it's in a scary area, he's kind of like whimpering it. He's like, hey, hey, almost like Peter from Family Guy.
Yeah. And I mean the theme itself, like I still find myself just kind of humming it to myself every once in a while.
It's a catchy.
I think it's something that like Nintendo's sound designers are really good at, is just these overall themes that really stick with you and don't become so like they're obvious, but they're not like they don't like hit you in the face. Like you notice them because they get stuck in your head. And like,
but they never get old. That's the thing. They don't go stale.
Like even like Breath of the Wild. Like Breath of the Wild's sound design was pretty minimum. Like they did like a real minimalistic stuff. But like if you think about it, like it had like really good sound design with when you're riding the horse, the way like the music kind of starts to pick up and like where you're at and the combat and all that. And I think that's something that Nintendo really, their talent in who they hire to do that is amazing. And
I would agree.
Yeah, I think like with Luigi's Mansion, like there's not really much as far as like music goes, but the music that is here is great, and that does again lead to the overall atmosphere of the game.
It's interesting because there's not a lot of variety of music, but there's a lot of variety in how the music is being portrayed, portrayed, but relayed across to the player. Mm-hmm. There's a couple other cool moments. Since we're talking about sound, there's a specific room where there's one of the ghosts where she's playing the piano, and the way you need to get her attention is by activating all the other instruments in the room. So there's 3 bongos, there is a harp, there's a xylophone, and there's like this weird saxophone looking thing. Mm-hmm. And each one of them is playing a different part of the Mario theme. So the first time I heard it, I first hit the harp. I was like, okay, that's cool. It's the Mario theme, but it's like in a different key. This is weird. And then I hit the drums, and I'm like, okay, am I supposed to like activate all of these?
Yeah.
So it was just the harp and the drums going. I'm like, all right, it's kind of cool. But then I hit the xylophone, and then I realized it was supposed to be a harmony between the xylophone and the harp. Mm-hmm. And then you hit the saxophone looking thing, and the whole thing comes in. And there's also a bass that you have to hit. Mm-hmm. So you get like the full gambit. It's a really cool little thing, and you can go into that room at any time and just listen to the Mario theme by turning on all the different instruments. It's kind of like a fun little Easter egg, which is actually part of the game at the same time. They kind of turned an Easter egg into a main part of the game, which was cool. And then, like I said, the fact that the way that the music shifts depending on what's happening in the game, I thought was just so well done.
Yeah, and it's funny to think that they were doing that like back then, because that's something that I never really like noticed until like Breath of the Wild. Going back to Breath of the Wild, like the way that they kind of blend the overworld music, when there is overworld music, into combat, into like if you go into like the stables and stuff like that, like the way the music all kind of blends together. But the fact that they were doing it back then with the limited hardware and all that stuff, like, I mean, obviously the stuff's a lot better now, but like everybody back then was always saying like, oh, the GameCube's underpowered and doesn't really do anything amazing.
Yeah.
But like, you know what I mean? Like they were doing all these cool things. And so I don't know. It's really cool to think about that. Like they have these talented people doing all these things.
One of the other things I liked about it too was we touched on the graphics a little bit. Is I'm glad you can skip it, but the animation of every time his hand's going for the doorknob and it's like shaking. It's cool because it shows so much personality with Luigi of just the slight shake and then it rotates. That's definitely, you can tell that was a very tech demo-y type of thing, because why would you do that for every new door except to show off like what it could do up close type of thing?
Well, I think that's also kind of in line with what Capcom was doing with Resident Evil. It was to mask the loading for the next area.
But the thing is, you only ever have to do that once. You don't do it for every single door.
Oh, really?
So it's only on doors that you're unlocking for the first time.
I don't think I've ever skipped them. I think every time I went through a new room, I would watch that. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. When you can skip the key animations, it's only for the key, so it's not a loading thing. I'm sure they have like clever, like the stairwells are definitely like their versions of loading zones.
Yeah.
Which is they're very short loading zones, so you don't even notice it.
Yeah.
Or they just, I mean, the mansion's not that big. I would not be surprised if they just have the whole thing loaded.
You know what?
Just like lower poly versions of it that they just up as you get closer and farther away.
You know what I was thinking like about like in preparation, like just thinking about the game, like trying to remember it. It's kind of like Nintendo's Resident Evil.
Yeah.
Because, you know, with all the doors and all the different zones, because you can't really call it like a Metroid game. You know what I mean?
No, because it's, well, no, yeah, it's weird because it has the potential to be, but it's not. So the reason, so a Metroid game, the whole idea is like exploration, going backtracking through this, backtracking. There's a lot of backtracking, but you don't need to go back through rooms that you've already completed before, except for the hallways and the necessary paths to go where you're going. It's not like
you need to unlock something to then go back. Yeah. So that's why it's like when I was thinking about it, I was like maybe like Nintendo made this specifically to try to convince Capcom to put Resident Evil on the GameCube.
That might be.
I mean, that's just
a cool theory.
That's just a theory, but like I mean, because then if you look at the library, they ended up having 5 Resident Evil games.
I think I'm supporting that theory because that's because what is it? And I never played the original Resident Evil, but they have all the animations for like
the doors
opening doors, right?
And that was their loading. That was how they masked their loading of the next rooms or of the wings and stuff like that.
That's smart.
Even in the remakes, you know, that weren't on like the PlayStation 1, they still have that loading animation
because it's become iconic now.
Yeah, that's right. And so I don't know. I was just thinking about that. I think. As far as the graphics go, just the lighting is really great too in this game.
I do notice now with like 2019 eyes to see some seams with it. Like the shadows are just other like flat text, like flat planes of textures that they kind of mask a little bit. It's a little weird, but overall it's cool because the lightning strikes and you'll randomly get like the shadows. There is. Actually, I talked to you about this off mic. Last week, I did the top 10 video game urban legends and creepypastas, whatnot.
Yeah.
One of the runner-ups for it, there's a theory in this game that Luigi's actually dead the whole time because if you walk into the one room, it's a fan theory.
Yeah. I think I've heard of it.
You walk into the one room, and if you stand at a spot when lightning strikes, it looks like Luigi's hanging himself.
Oh, yeah.
It's like really fucking dark. I didn't see it when I was playing it. I also wasn't really looking for it.
Right.
But because I like Luigi, I don't want him dead. But yeah, it's the lighting in this is like really well done. Overall, just it's definitely a very because it's shorter too. You can tell it was a very tech demo-y type of game. That's not to take anything away from it.
Right.
In fact, the fact that they took like kind of a tech demo-y type of thing and turned it into something that's actually like a legitimate game and not just for like show.
I think with Nintendo, they had a lot to prove with like the GameCube because everybody was saying it was an underpowered system, like off the bat.
And the N64 didn't sell as well as the other competitors when that came out, so they kind of needed a bounce back. Unfortunately, the GameCube didn't sell as well as the competitors again, but obviously they're doing fine.
Yeah. But, so I think like with this game, they really needed to show what you could do from a technical level, like with the lighting, with the physics in this game. Like back then, like the cloth physics, like that stuff was rough to do.
Actually those the cloth physics look pretty good. Like there's a couple moments when I'm like, okay, that's kind of bad there, but like great for 2001.
Yeah, and then like the translucency of the ghosts and like the way the ghosts are textured and the way they look, like the overall feel of the ghosts like look.
Another funny thing that they do, sorry to cut you off there, was the reflections in the mirrors. The way they do it is kind of odd. For small mirrors, I think it's legit actually reflecting it because it doesn't, I don't know how to describe it. It looks like it's actually reflecting, like they actually were able to get that to work.
Yeah.
But for the large mirrors, it's a matte texture, which still like reacts to what you're doing. But you can tell it's not actually like reflective, if that makes sense. Like it just looks like a matte painting that just repeats, like calls back what you do. It's really like I can boot it up and show it to you, but like it's really interesting because it like so the mirrors in the bathroom actually look like mirrors. Like you see a little bit of like a shimmer, a sheen to it.
Yeah.
other rooms, there'll be a giant mirror and there's no sheen to it. So it just looks like a flat texture. But when you walk in front of it, you'll see Luigi in the quote unquote mirror. And when you turn around, it does everything that you do. So I don't know if that's
so you're saying like the specular effect is turned down on that. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
The way I was thinking is, did they just program it to I don't know how they did it. It looks really off. That's probably the worst graphical effect. Graphical effect they do. But it seems to me like looking at it, I'm trying to picture how you would do it behind the scenes, and it seems like this really cool technical workaround for not being able to actually have reflective textures.
What it could be, and like I haven't done 3D modeling in a very long time or texturing, but from what I remember, like if you were to do anything with a reflective surface that was supposed to be glass, it took up a lot of processing power. Like when you went to go render it and do all this stuff, if anything, the only thing I could think of that would be like a quick shortcut is they would have done a camera that is showing that viewpoint, and then that area is essentially showing what that camera is seeing.
I could see that.
So it could be just another camera, and then they like that plane, the mirror plane, has is told to just display what that sees.
Would make sense actually.
But that's the only way that I can think of it. And then again, I don't really have a lot of experience in game engines, so I don't know what game engines were capable back at that time.
Yeah, that actually makes sense because like the mirror is like. It doesn't really shift perspective all that much, which would make sense with the whole stationary camera type of thing.
Yeah.
But no, so graphically and audibly, there we go. That's the word I was looking for. The game is super impressive.
Yeah.
I guess what I want to talk about next is though the game design, like the gameplay and the design itself. Holy shit, is this fun! Like this is what a Ghostbusters game has been trying to be forever. I did hear the one on the Wii was really good, but I did not personally play it.
I think they just remade that too. For like the Xbox and the PlayStation.
I think so. I heard it was really good, but I didn't personally play it. But like, there's Ghostbusters games on the NES and Super Nintendo. I don't know if there was on the Super Nintendo, but definitely on the NES.
Right.
And they never really could capture what the movie was. This would have been the closest thing to a Ghostbusters type of game, I guess, at that time. But
I wonder like how Nintendo even came to this decision of kind of like a semi-Ghostbuster type game, because prior to this, like Boos have been in the Mario games, but like they never really were like that. They were never really a focal point. They were always just kind of there as like. Or secondary.
Like they had like the closest thing they had was in Mario 64 where you have like the Boo House, but they're still secondary compared to the whole game. Like it's not like a main part of the it's main in the sense where you can get like
the stars right.
out of it, but it's not like
it's not the focal point.
Exactly.
I mean, and that's why like I would love to have like seen the pitch for this game, or at least like the conversation as to like how this game even came.
So I did actually look up a little bit on this. I don't know anything about the pitch of it, but this was supposed to be originally on the N64.
Really?
It was going to be very different though. It was going to be a Mario centered game. And it was just like they didn't really go into much more details of like how it progressed from there, but basically it seemed like they had the idea for this game, for not this specific game, but for a Mario universe game type of thing. And once they transitioned it over to the GameCube, it just kind of took shape as Luigi's Mansion.
Right.
One of the things that apparently Shigeru Miyamoto wanted, though, the reason it took shape on the N64 is that Shigeru Miyamoto wanted a more adult like Mario game, because he supposedly cited specifically the peace signs that Mario gives every time he would complete a level in like Super Mario World.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to be quite as cute and cuddly. He wanted something a little bit more darker. So that started on the N64. Obviously, we know it never came to fruition, and this is the outcome of that darker Mario game that was the idea. But funnily enough, you still have the peace signs in the game. Every time Luigi gets a key, he gives a peace sign.
I think that's just like a Japanese-centric type thing where they like do the peace sign for celebration. But that's interesting. And I guess like in that same vein, like the GameCube did kind of take on more adult, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean
tone with games, because like going back to Resident Evil, they had Eternal Darkness on there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to play that game so bad.
You know, that's another pretty good game. They had like more. They were a little bit more adult toned. So in that, again, maybe that's why they focused on this in the beginning.
I mean, if you really think about it, even look at like Metroid Prime is a very adult style. I mean, it's adult.
It's darker.
It's darker. And it's not to say that like, because I hate the term when people say it's adult. That means it has to be violent or it has to be sexual or it has to be swearing.
Right.
A more adult game can just be like less cute. Like it'll be less cute. It's going to be more just not realistic. I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's just a different tone. They completely shift the tone from happy to more just kind of like almost somber.
Yeah. That's definitely a good vibe I would say for Metroid, because like Metroid, you're alone by like, and like the overall sound design gives you that isolation type feeling. So yeah, I can see that.
And actually, even in Luigi's Mansion, there was a couple. When I was playing this morning. There was times when he was just humming the song but you don't hear. It's very quiet. Like the music was so low, and all you could hear was his footsteps. I'm like, you're just alone in this mansion.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there's toads periodically strewn throughout, and there's
Egad every once in a while.
Every once in a while, which I actually realized that you can't go back out to see him once you leave him. It seems. I don't know. I didn't really
go back to the lab.
Yeah. Can you go back to the lab once you're in the mansion? Unless he like,
I think you can. I don't remember. Doesn't he get like digitized? I might be confusing it with Dark Moon now.
No, he doesn't get digitized.
I might be confusing that with Dark Moon.
I still need to play. I have Dark Moon actually. It's somewhere I can see it.
Dark Moon is a much less memorable game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Not a bad game, just a lot. I literally, the only thing with Dark Moon is the different locations are the only thing that like stick out with, and I think that was like with me, like Dark Moon and kind of like talking about Luigi's Mansion 3. I'm excited that everything is kind of in one place.
Was Dark Moon all over the place?
Dark Moon had like 4 or 5 different levels, and each one was different themed. In 3, from what we've seen so far, it's one hotel.
Okay.
But there's every so many floors is like a different theme.
Yeah, I heard I don't
know how I feel about that.
I think they're calling back to they're kind of giving themselves a little reference. You ever heard of the game Hotel Mario? For the CDI?
Yes, I want to say.
So,
I might be thinking of Mario's Missing.
So, quick history lesson. Nintendo was trying to make a disc-based add-on for the Super Nintendo, and I promise this ties back to Luigi's Mansion 3. Was trying to make a disc-based add-on for the Super Nintendo. They originally partnered with Sony, and then they realized that Sony was getting the better end of the deal with that, so then they decided, without telling Sony, to partner with Philips. And so both deals ended up falling through. I might do a whole episode on the whole thing, like bit by bit, not just this brief overview. Both deals ended up falling through. Sony went on to create the PlayStation. So the PlayStation is somehow bizarrely we thank the PlayStation for existing to Nintendo, which is kind of weird to think about.
Created their
own biggest competitor.
Yeah.
And then the Philips thing also fell through and created what's called a CDI. Not a great console. It was more of a multimedia type of thing. But because of the deal with it, Philips had the rights to create Nintendo licensed or Nintendo character games for their console that with the Nintendo never even touched. So there's 3 Zelda games on the CDI.
Yeah, I know about that.
And then there is Hotel Mario, which is just like it's a 2D. From what I saw, it's a 2D game. I might try to do it for Mario Month one time for next July if I can get a copy of it and get a CDI as well.
Right.
But they're a little pricey. But you basically, from what I remember, it's like you're running this hotel and people are coming out of the rooms and you have to close them back in and stuff like that. I don't know. It's super weird.
Yeah. It sounds odd.
It kind of like, I wonder if they're like kind of like hearkening back to their two hotel
like as a reference
type of thing.
I mean, possibly,
which would be really cool.
But I don't know. I mean, that'd be
I would love that.
That would be weird for them to reference a game that they never made.
Yes, but it also is such a Nintendo thing to do, because there's even there's games that, like, I mean, there's references to stuff on the NES that technically Nintendo never made.
Oh.
But obviously because it was on the NES, it's weird because it's Nintendo characters, so it's still theirs, but they just didn't touch it. I mean, and Nintendo doesn't make all of their first party games either.
Well, that's true. They do have like Camelot or Next Level games. Like
Capcom also did some Zelda games.
Yeah, the Minish Cap and
Oracle of Ages,
the Oracles,
and Seasons,
Yep.
But okay, so what we were talking about, I lost my train of thought. Now.
So I was saying how with 2 and 3, the only, I guess, concern I have with 3 is the overall design of, because like I think that was what I liked so much about 1 is that that everything was uniform, but
it was in one location.
Everything felt, the continuity felt good. With 2, I wasn't crazy about like jumping around so much because it didn't really feel like a Luigi's Mansion game from what the GameCube had set up as far as expectation. Yeah. The game wasn't bad. It was fine. Mechanically, it was fine. They added like new features.
I might actually play that next.
I mean, I would recommend it, especially since you just beat the one on the GameCube, so you can see what those comparisons are. But my only thing was, from what we've seen, mechanically 3 looks good. It feels like that they're kind of doing like the Mario Odyssey thing with Luigi's Mansion now, where they're doing like different levels of the hotel are going to be like, oh well, here's a desert and here's like a pirate thing.
That'd be kind of weird. I mean, I know they're probably not going to do desert and pirate, but like
no, they show that.
They show that, really?
In the latest trailers. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna they're gonna like build it into the story as to why that happens. Yeah. I mean, it's a haunted mansion. You know, I mean, they can do whatever they want with it. Yeah.
So there's supernatural stuff in it. So what I want to talk about now is the actual ghosts. Now, I know you haven't played it for a little bit.
A long time.
I just, played it in the last 2 days. But even then, I won't remember everything. But what I loved about how they approached this game is that a lot of the gameplay, you have boss fights. There's only actually like 3 or 4 boss fights in the entire game. But all of the individual ghosts are kind of like mini bosses.
Yeah.
And so you have just regular run-of-the-mill ghosts that have different like characteristics of how you're supposed to catch them. Some of them like hug you and they shake you and you have to break free. Others just kind of they don't move, but they just drop down from the ceiling. You have to take them out. And the way you have to stun a ghost before you can suck it up with the vacuum, or what is it? The Poltergeist 3000?
Yeah.
You stun them with a flashlight, it exposes their heart, which lets you suck them up into the vacuum. So, and each ghost is a little bit different. But then you have like these official, like not official, but like these special ghosts. Like there's a lot of like just regular ones throughout strewn throughout the mansion. But there is special ones that you kind of have to take or catch, because they will give you keys to get into other parts of the mansion. They will also turn into paintings for you, so that way you can kind of fill out this portrait room that I guess we didn't even talk about who Egad was. We'll talk about that in a second. But you have to get turned into portraits and get put into this like portrait room. And that's pretty much how you go through the game. You have to. Actually, oh my god!
I think
we should start from the beginning with how like what's happening to Luigi in this. We've talked so much about
just like a bunch of different things. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you want to start off with that, or do you just want to talk about? Because I think talking about these like mini bosses, like that's really I think what was the big thing with everybody is like each mini boss was kind of like its own puzzle in a way.
That's what I was going to describe it as. It's because the challenge of defeating the boss wasn't in like a technical platforming sense, though the final boss kind of was, but it was more just how do you expose that ghost's heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the puzzle of it, which is really cool. So yeah, we'll go into those, but to put context in all of this, Luigi got a letter about he won a mansion. So he goes to the mansion of course, because why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And he sees that it's haunted, and he finds out Mario's been kidnapped, and he's somewhere in the mansion. You find out later that Mario's been turned into a painting. Spoiler alert. And you have to rescue him, and that's pretty much how it goes. So, and that's pretty much the whole plot. When you first walk in, though, a ghost scares you, and this guy comes out of nowhere with his vacuum pack and sucks up the ghost, and that's you find out that's your friend Egad, which is a great pun. I always thought that was I like that name a lot.
Yeah.
And he gives you the Poltergeist 3000, which then lets you suck up the ghost, and that's the story. So, sorry, that was a little discombobulated.
Throw that context in there.
But just a little bit of context. So that's why you're hunting these ghosts. And then, like you said, Vin, each of the special ghosts that we mentioned before is a different puzzle.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of your favorites?
So the most memorable one, and I think this is the most memorable for most people, would be the baby.
Mm-hmm. The first a full boss fight. That was not even like a mini boss. That was a full on boss fight.
And it's like throughout the whole game, like it's like this whole family you're kind of like sucking up.
Yeah.
Throughout the thing, like it's like this whole family that I guess used to live in this mansion. And then because
it's a big ass family. There's 23 ghosts.
Well, I mean, some people have big families
that all live in the same house.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're rich, I guess.
Or really poor.
Yeah, true. I mean, that could go either way, really.
With how big that house is, I would assume rich too, though.
But like from what I remember, it was like that one, the ballroom. I know I mentioned like the ballroom dancers. The dog was like a big one. There was was there like one in the shower? There was like a bathroom one.
That sounds creepier than it. Out of context.
Am I right on that one?
Yeah, there is one.
There was like
there's a lady showering actually.
Yeah,
and you have to, which is a little voyeuristic, but okay.
But yeah, so like
so weird. I didn't even think about that till now.
And I think that's the thing. It's like with these, it's like all these family members being stuck in, I guess, like their point in time.
They're in their room, pretty much.
And then you're going in and liberating their spirit by vacuuming them up and turning them into a painting.
Some of the some of the cool ones that I remembered were there was the butler, and the way you would get him to he's wandering the halls. And you have to get him back to his room. So when you have this little thing called a horror boy or a horror game boy, which EGAD gives you. And you can use it to scan the ghosts to see their weaknesses. And they give some hint as to what they need. So throughout as you play through the game, you're going to get other power-ups as well. Your Poltergeist 3000 can also shoot fire, shoot water, and shoot ice, and they treat that as like a rock, paper, scissors type of thing. Fire beats ice, ice beats water, water beats fire. And different ghosts have different power-ups. Sometimes there's ice ghosts, so you need to use fire to like melt the ice. Sometimes there's water ghosts, so you need to use ice to freeze it. And then once you do that, then you can get their hearts. So this butler, you actually have to take the fire add-on and light the candle the candelabra that he's holding. I think that's what that's called. I hope I did that. So right. But it's a big big candle type of thing. And then you follow him back to his room, and that's where you can finally capture. That's what makes his heart gets exposed.
Right.
There's another guy who's just like this. He's like eating. So he's such a glutton.
Yeah.
Like he's just eating constantly. So what I was having a hard time figuring out what I had to do, and I couldn't quite understand it. What you do is like you actually have to suck up the food on his plate, and then these ghost waiters will come out and refill it. But if you suck those up and then take out what's left on the plate, then the ghost becomes enraged, and now his heart's showing.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I vaguely remember that, yeah.
And even in that fight, he starts shooting fireballs at you, and you have to dodge all those fireballs first, and once he tires himself out, then you can finally start sucking him up.
Right.
The ballroom dancers, like you mentioned before, were really cool. That one was interesting because there was a bunch of Shy Guy ghosts dancing in that room. Those Shy Guy ghosts were an interesting type of ghost to fight. They weren't a mini boss, but they had masks on and pitchforks, and you would have to suck off their mask or use the fire to burn it off. And then shine a flashlight on them to expose it.
To expose them, because like the light wouldn't, because of the mask, wouldn't do anything, right?
Exactly. There's a lot of like really creative ways that they have you like defeat these ghosts, whether it's just the regular like ghosts like the Ghost Shy Guys or the ones that hang from the ceiling, or the little mini bosses, which I love those boss fights. Ooh, another cool one. There's a dude benching. There's a like bench pressing. It's a full like gym. He's lifting weights and stuff. You have to when you scan him. Luigi says something. Normally you hear something from like the ghost's mind, but Luigi says, "Oh man, I should really go to the gym. I could like hit some bags or something like that." And there's a bunch of like one of those like the
heavy bags
for boxers.
Yeah.
So you go up to it and you hit A, and he punches it. And if you stand in the same spot, though, it'll swing back and hit you and hurt you.
Yeah.
But if you get on the right side, it'll go into the ghost and hit the ghost.
Right.
And you have to do that enough times till his heart gets exposed, and then you can take him out.
Yeah.
There's so many cool stuff. There's so many cool little things in this.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like there were, like you said, there was like 20 something, and then so like each one was a little puzzle, and I think that's like they disguised like a little puzzle game in here. You know what I mean? It's not because it's not like an adventure game. It's not a platformer. It was like its own thing, which I think made it a lot like appealing too. A lot of fun. But I feel like in the second one, I feel like they took a lot of that out. I feel
Did
like
they?
I want to say so because I don't remember those. I don't remember any of the bosses at all from that game. I remember because the objective in that one is you're collecting pieces of the Dark Moon.
Yeah.
And I remember the dog. There was a dog in there, and I remember that being like the main thing. Like there's like a little like friendly dog that he has as like a partner.
I'm looking at the Dark Moon. Like I have the game in front of me now. It actually has an instruction manual, which you never see anymore.
Yeah,
like
true.
Granted, this game is like
that came out like
old 2013, which is weird. But even in 2013, you weren't seeing instruction manuals anymore.
Yeah, they started phasing a lot of that stuff out just to save paper and all that.
Well,
stuff.
that and a lot of times games now just teach you, like you don't need the instruction manual because it just teaches you through gameplay.
Right.
Before, like old NES games, they didn't know how to do that. They didn't have the game design language to teach you.
So they had to be in the manuals. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we talked about the gameplay. We covered pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that you still wanted to talk about it?
I mean, do you want to talk about expectations for the third one? I mean, I feel like
you'll have you'll have more expectations than I do because like I hadn't played any Luigi. Actually, this is a good time to say this. I never even played a Luigi's Mansion game up until 2 days ago when I just grinded through this game, which was so enjoyable.
Well, since it's so fresh in your head, like what would you like to see in a third one? Like what was like I mean, obviously it's going to look better, and then based off of like what we've seen from the trailers, like we know there's going to be another level of puzzle design with Luigi and that type and that type of stuff where but like so there'll be more like physical trap puzzles, you know, obviously.
That actually seems like a step I would like to see cuz like if I wanted more Luigi's Mansion but different, I would probably want a similar style where it's a mansion full of ghosts, but the puzzles for those ghosts are different or more complex, or more different, possibly more complex. So more complex doesn't always mean good. And you could also try switching it up, like turning things on its head, where maybe like you would have to use one of the other ghosts to take out one of the other ghosts in some way, shape, or form. I have no idea how you would do that, but what gameplay ideas would you?
Well, I know they shown off something in the trailers where they have like a slam mechanic, where if you're vacuuming up a ghost and you hit a button, like he like kind of whips the
hose.
The vacuum, like so you know how like when you're vacuuming, there's like the trail, there's like the vacuum trail. Where it's like sucking down the ghost, like he kind of whips it and like it slams him against the ground, or it slams him like around like over his head, and that's like a way to like speed up. That's actually something that I think they added in.
They had something similar in this, but it wasn't intuitive. They didn't have like a button for it. Like you just have to hold the joystick in the opposite direction the ghost is trying to move to like suck them up, right?
Yeah.
If you kind of like rotate it, like kind of swing the joystick around, then it'll have these quick bursts of like it'll drop by like 3 or 4 at a time instead of 1.
Yeah, and I think that was something that they changed in Dark Moon as well. There was like an insta catch type thing where it's like if you got them down to a certain thing and you hit a button, it would insta catch them. It would just like take a big chunk of health and just like catch them right away. So it looks like, I mean, with each one, they're trying to improve the catching mechanics because it's such a common thing. Like, you do it all the time. And you were saying, like, some of the mechanics in Luigi's Mansion were a little frustrating.
Oh, yeah. I guess I totally forgot about the final boss stuff, which is, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that the mechanics were good. And in a way, like, watching you do that final boss did remind me of, like, sometimes the perspective is a little weird in trying to aim, because I feel like they were so limited with the aiming. It's like it's like either up, down, or you pivot. Like, he didn't really have full 360.
No, I mean, he kind of did. So every mini boss and boss in the game at that point was designed around the limitations of the camera that they gave you, whether it's due to technical limitations that they couldn't do, or the fact they just didn't know how to do it yet because it was early in the GameCube's life cycle, which I would think it's the latter, because they clearly were able to figure out, like, look at Wind Waker. They figured out, like, the full 360 camera for that.
Yeah.
But I guess because it's a very tight and confined space type of game that it couldn't necessarily use that type of camera. I don't know. But the main issue I had with the final boss is that up until that point, everything in the game was pretty well designed. Like, if I screwed up or if I got hurt, I always knew it was 100% my fault because I didn't account for something.
Right.
In the final boss, I was very hard to figure out what you had to do because the mechanics changed a little bit. So you could, earlier in the game, you could, like, suck up different items and shoot them back out, and that's how you beat the final boss. You, like, I guess, spoiler alert, King Boo is actually Bowser, or no, he's taking over Bowser. He's in, like, Bowser's form. It's really weird. You're still fighting King Boo, and so you, like, he shoots these mines out, and you have to suck them up and shoot them back at him, but it's not very intuitive because up until that point, whenever there was, like, another item that you could suck up, you could do it from a distance. You could, like, have it, like, come to you. And this one, you have to be right on it. And so the first couple times before I actually ended up looking up what you helped me. You looked up what we needed to do.
Yeah.
I would, like, suck on the mine and it wouldn't do anything. I was just confused.
And that was, like, both of our initial response was like, oh, well, you obviously have to use these spiked balls, to combat them, but, like, they didn't give you any visual cue from a distance, and that's, like, maybe, like, the one thing, because, like, even if it was, like, supposed to be the intention of, like, oh, well, this is too heavy to move, in certain games you would get some sort of visual feedback where it's like it maybe, like, would just shake a little bit or just move a little bit, implying that it's too heavy to suck up from that far away. But this one, they didn't give you any.
And then even with the final, yeah, you're right, it didn't give you anything. And then when you get to the final, so when you do suck it up, you have to shoot it at him. And we tried everything else until we had that. We tried, like, luring him over to the mines to have him walk over them. He has, like, a sucking up thing to suck Luigi up into his mouth. Gross. And and so we tried to lure him over to the mines to get him to suck up the mines, and that didn't work either.
Kind of like King Dodongo from Zelda. That was like my second thought was like, oh, well, he has to suck the mines out.
And we even tried, like, Mario 64 style, went around to the back of his tail and tried to spin him, but that didn't work either. But you have to you suck the mines up by, like, being right up next to it, and you can't just shoot it at him right away because you have to hit his head, but you can't aim up or down like you do in the rest of the game, which I'm fine with. Like, that's an easy thing to be, like, figure out, like, right away. You know right away when you're trying to do that. So what you have to do is you have to wait for him to, like, crouch over to breathe fire at you and shoot it right before he does, because otherwise it's going to hurt you and him at the same time, which is fine, but you're stunned and then you're useless for a little bit. Once you shoot the mine into his head, it blows the head off, and then King Boo comes out, which you can finally, like, whittle down his massive 500 health bar until you can finally beat him. So that was my my main issues with that final boss fight were, one, about the sucking mechanic, where they showed you something, they taught you something new, but didn't actually teach you.
Yeah,
they made you do something that you hadn't done at that point in the game.
They should have given some sort of visual feedback, because, like, even in the mansion, like, if there's something that you're, like, sucking on that's too heavy, it'll shake back and forth.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they didn't do that with these is kind of weird that they didn't do that, like, visual trigger.
And then the other portion is when you are trying to suck up King Boo, the perspective is very difficult to understand where he is in relation to which direction you're pointing the vacuum at. Which that's the only time I felt like the limitations of the game engine actually played against me. Like every other time they designed everything so well around the limitations of the game engine. This was the only time where I was kind of like, I mean, I was able to get it towards the end once I kind of like got used to it, but it wasn't intuitive. You had to really like
it is a little
focus down on it.
It is a little disorienting because like you think that you're under him, but he's like his shadow might be slightly behind you,
and you can't see his shadow sometimes.
Yeah,
either.
and you can't really tell that way. But
no, it was such a good game, man. Like, thank you for coming on. We're not 100% done yet, but this was so good.
Yeah, it's a great game, and it's definitely a game that like when I played it, it was one of those experiences that I was like. Kind of like even like with Wind Waker when everybody was like, oh my God, Wind Waker looks so bad, this, that, and the other. I was like, Wind Waker was great. Wind Waker, I think, was I've beaten like 3 or 4 times.
I beat it for the first time actually earlier this year, maybe late last year.
And I think like with the GameCube, like a lot of people really railed against it and the games that were out for it, but they were such great design games. Like Luigi's Mansion was such a fun game, especially to play like as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
To really like be able to appreciate like the stuff that was going on. And I'm glad that they're continuing the series. I really hope with 3, with all the combat innovations that they do, it's going to make it an even like more enjoyable experience. Again, my only concern is just like the locales. That's really the only thing I want to worry about.
Yeah.
Is I don't know if I'm like really going to be crazy about like these different like themes and stuff like that. I think they might be going away from like the more darker tone and like by doing things like
doing something a little bit more lighthearted again.
Yeah,
which is fine, but it kind of like separates what Luigi's Mansion was meant to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure the game will play well, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Like visually, like I mean, if anything, if it looks like Mario Odyssey, it's going to look amazing.
I love Mario Odyssey.
Mario Odyssey looks really good. I don't know. I think it's also cool that they're doing like an 8-player multi or mini game thing.
Are they?
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of the press for this, so that's why like this is all new to me.
Yeah. So they announced like there's like mini games. There it's like 4-on-4. It's like 4 Luigis versus 4 Gooigis. There's different mini games that you can play. Someone that I was watching on YouTube said that one of the mini games reminded them of something from the Nintendo Land.
Yeah, there is a Nintendo Land for the Wii U.
On the Wii U, like one of them was a game that was similar to that was on the Nintendo Land.
They did a cool thing. So in the Nintendo Land, in the Luigi's Mansion thing in Nintendo Land, you would have 5 players. One person would play as Luigi, or sorry, one player would be
the ghost.
Be the ghost,
and you would have to hunt down.
You'd have to hunt down the ghost, and like everyone had flashlights, but the flashlights would steadily drain in battery. So you could either hold on the whole time to be safe, but then you would lose your battery fast.
Yeah.
And there was, battery pickups, but it was few. It wasn't frequent enough to be able to spam. So it was like really well balanced.
Nintendo Land itself was a weird.
I love Nintendo Land, man.
I played it a lot.
It was great.
It was such a nice little tech demo for that system. As an aside,
it sucks that the Wii U flopped so bad because there was once again kind of like the GameCube. I bet you there's going to be a lot of games that like there's already a couple that are like beloved classics, like the Super Mario Brothers games. 3D World, Super Mario Bros. U and Luigi U.
Yeah.
There's also.
There's Donkey Kong.
Oh yeah, Tropical Freeze. Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker, which is its own standoff thing.
That's a pretty like popular series. I never got into it though.
I loved I have not played it. I own it. It's over there.
Right.
But the reason I even got it is because I loved the Captain Toad mini games from the 3D World.
Really?
Oh, I loved it. It was so fun. So when I saw that, there was a full game devoted to just those like little mini games, like an expanded version of it.
Yeah.
I had to get it. What else do I have? I don't know. That's not about Luigi's Mansion. But the Wii U, I think, is going to turn into the GameCube at some point. I don't think nearly as beloved or nearly as good.
Yeah.
But I can see it having a similar trajectory where it was completely overshadowed in its time. And I will say it was definitely more overshadowed than the GameCube was, because at least the GameCube had like those big, huge titles that did come out for that. Even when people who were hooked on PlayStation 2 and Xbox, it's still, Wind Waker, huge game. Smash Melee, huge game.
Mario Sunshine, the Pikmin series started on there.
Pikmin started on GameCube.
Prime. I mean, I
love Metroid Prime, man.
I mean, we got characters like Beautiful Joe because of the GameCube. We got a lot of RPGs. What was the one that was on the Dreamcast that came over to the GameCube?
Skies of Arcadia?
Skies of Arcadia Legends. There was...
I actually have the Dreamcast version somewhere over here.
Yeah, I have the one on the GameCube, but that's a great series. There was a lot of great stuff on that yeah, what a great series. On the GameCube, and I think the Switch is... The Wii U was like a nice stepping stone to the Switch.
It was its own worst enemy, too, with its name. But yeah.
But I'm kind of glad that... I mean, this is terrible to say. I'm kind of glad that it failed. Because I did like the system. Visually, I thought the system was great. Everybody was like, oh, it's underpowered. I mean, nah, it looked good.
Power doesn't mean good. Like once again... like we said before, like good game design art design goes a long way.
Yeah.
That's why if you go back and you play like old Medal of Honor games like on the PS2, they don't look very good.
Right.
But if you go back on the PS2 and play Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper
they have great
or Ratchet and Clank,
absolutely.
like they're definitely dated, but it doesn't hurt you to look at.
Yeah, yeah. So in regards to that system, like it failing, I think put a lot of emphasis on Nintendo really needing to nail the Switch, and I think they did a great job. And
I love the Switch.
I think I'm really glad that we're getting a Luigi's Mansion for it, because I was kind of disappointed with Dark Moon.
Yeah.
It was fine, but it wasn't like, it's not a staple, I would say. Like Luigi's Mansion, the first one, is a staple. I'm hoping with this new one,
it'll be a staple of the Switch.
Yeah, it'll be a staple. Yeah. I mean, cuz like think about it, like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, like that's like a staple. Everybody knows Tropical Freeze.
It got ported to the Switch.
Yeah. And like but I didn't play. What was the one that came out on the Wii? The Wii. It was like the Donkey Kong Returns or something like that.
Donkey Kong Country Returns. Yeah.
Almost no one really talks about that one, but for some reason
it's still popular.
Yeah, but like for some reason I always hear people talk about Tropical Freeze. And
it's a tough game too.
Oh, it's a great game.
It's super hard,
and it has a really good art style. And I'm hoping that Nintendo, at least with this one, and they've been on a good streak so far. Mario
Nintendo
Odyssey
in general is good with their art direction.
Mario Odyssey was like a great return to classic Mario, what people wanted from Mario,
but all at the same time completely revamping it. Well, I did an episode on it a while ago with I don't even know if I even talked about it in the episode, but the fact that they got rid of lives and just did coins, super smart.
And Breath of the Wild being a complete reimagining of the Zelda series,
but still felt like Zelda.
Yeah, and I think with I have high expectation of 3, and I think Nintendo will deliver. So that's really what I'm looking forward to.
I think I'll probably pick it up as well, especially now that I've got to experience the original one. It's so good.
Yeah.
Like if you have not played this game, I hate the phrase, but what are you waiting for? Because I went in not necessarily a cynic, but I went in with like, all right, I know people like this. I'm sure it'll be fine. But I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And the ending of it, really simple and sweet, but it was just the game. It was exactly what it needed to be. It didn't need it to be. It didn't overstay. It did not overstay. Oh my fucking A. It did not overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm leaving all that in.
There you go.
It didn't overstay its welcome. It was just this perfect length game. Like I beat it in like 6 or 7 hours. Like it was just such a fun experience, and it was something satisfying about being able to clear a room and having all the lights come on and know like, yeah, I got this one done. So when you the final thing, and I think they kind of do this on purpose. The last room that you get, the very last key that you need in order to get to the final boss, is on the 3rd floor, and the boss is, you have to go all the way down to the basement. So it makes you walk through all of your accomplishments as you're going back through the mansion. You get to see everything that you've done right up until that final zone, which I think is a really cool thing to do.
I mean, it might also just be a cool way of like showing you like, hey, like if this room isn't lit up completely, or if you're missing a boo or something like that, it gives you another opportunity to go and do it before you get to the final boss, instead of it being like, here's the last room that you light up, and like right next to it's the final boss type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it also gives you a time. I mean, like when I was playing the game, it took me a while to get through it because I was just kind of wandering. I just like to get lost in these types of games, like really experience them. Like I did the same thing with Super Mario Sunshine. I would just walk around Delfino Plaza and stuff like that, and just
because it's not like it's a big world, but it's like rich. If that makes sense, if there's a lot of personality baked into every single room in Luigi's Mansion.
I think the more time you spend in these rooms and with games like these, the more time that it kind of just like really sinks in the appreciation that you end up having for it.
Yeah.
So
I guess to wrap this all up, final thoughts. I mean, I guess we kind of gave our final thoughts. Any last words then on Luigi's Mansion?
It is a great game. I think everybody should at least play it that has the opportunity to. Even if you like you borrow it for someone, or I mean, I'm against emulation, but if that's your only option, if you don't have the money for a GameCube or Luigi's Mansion, because you said this is going for like a good.
It was more on. I don't know why Amazon was selling it for 140.
Is that on price charting? What is it on price charting? Let's take a look at that real quick. Price chart.
Yeah, let's look at that.
Video game price chart. That's such a great website.
It is. I hate when people like go by that exclusively, but it's such a good ballpark. Like,
it's annoying when you go to a flea market and you see
like
video games at that price, like eBay prices. But did you know that they have? And this is like completely off topic. Did you know that? Yeah. So the video game. So price charting is saying $29
for
Luigi's Mansion.
loose. If you want it complete, $37. So yeah,
new $100. Maybe that's what you saw on Amazon.
That would make more sense. I was so confused. I was like, why are they selling it for $139?
What I like about this is that if you have this website up on your desktop, there's a notification thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can have it. It'll check eBay, and if you say, I want certain games under this price, it'll pop up on your desktop. I had it up every once in a while just to see, like, because I don't really collect as hardcore as I used to because of money.
Yeah.
But I would just see, like, what prices were going for, and that's a good way to try to find deals. And, like, it'll notify you, like, within the last, like, 2 minutes of
price charting. Sponsor us. Sponsor.
But it is a great game. I definitely think everybody should play it. You can pass on Dark Moon, but if that's your only option, I think that would be a good one too.
I'm still gonna try it just to see what it's like.
Definitely try it. I mean, if you want to like at least get into, and if you want to catch up before 3 comes out.
Yeah.
I think 3 is gonna be. I'm hoping 3 is gonna be fun. I really have high expectations for it. I would be pretty bummed out if it's.
I'm sure it's going to be. I mean, Nintendo so far has been hitting like 10 out of 10s on their first party games on the Switch.
Yeah, true.
Like Mario
a lot of people have been given some pushback with Link's Awakening, but
I think the only pushback's just for the price, not necessarily the game.
Yeah,
which I can understand a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people do complain about the price. We're like, oh, why is it a $60 game? It's an old Game Boy game, but like. Everything is redone,
but they also don't have to do all the grunt work for all the design aspects. It's essentially an art overhaul versus a mechanic overhaul. But I think they did change a lot with the mechanics.
It has to be updated in a new engine, which means all new coding. You know what I mean?
I mean, for me, it's more like they don't have to plan out all the bosses. No. They don't have to plan out the story. They don't have to plan out.
But that's probably
the characters. I mean, that's a lot of work generally for almost every game.
I would imagine that's the cheapest aspect, like all the planning phase, because like character design, character animation, character modeling, texturing, lighting, all that takes time, and all that takes tons of people to do. Like that's usually the more expensive stuff.
That would make sense.
And they did all new orchestral music for the game, so the sound design is completely different. I don't know. That's like the one.
I mean, I still bought it. I can understand a little bit. That's what I was saying. I can understand the argument. But not 100% at the same time. I think the main thing a lot of people are frustrated with is like a lot of games that are like third party games. They don't go down in price on the Switch. Like it could be like you can get like.
You mean like first party?
No, third-party games. Like, I know this was first-party, but I think it's like a combination. Like, people are just getting frustrated from multiple things.
Yeah.
Like you can get a brand new copy of like, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm just going to spitball right now, but let's say Shovel Knight, right?
Yeah.
Shovel Knight, maybe you get it off the PlayStation Store for $10, like the digital version.
Yeah.
On Switch, it's still like 20 or 30.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's like, why is the digital version that much more on, like, there's no reason for it. So that's where a lot of people are like getting blowback on. Now, first party games, like brand new games, that's different. But when it's like ports of other games, that's where a lot of the blowback from people I've been talking to at least.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand some of the games like
I guess it's a little different than Link's Awakening because that is a full like you said, it's a reimagining.
It's not like a remaster. Like I mean, like with remasters, it's like changing.
I call it like a reimagining.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, Luigi's Mansion.
yeah, sorry.
No, we're good. Great game. Definitely go check it out. Mm-hmm. So before we wrap up, Vin, is there any social media or anything you want to plug?
No, nothing really associated. Nothing really like the stuff that I do. It isn't really associated with.
It doesn't have to be associated with it.
That's all right. All right. I appreciate that though.
As usual, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StillLoadingPod on all of them. Also, check out my Patreon, patreon.com/StillLoadingPod.
You still doing the blog?
Still Loading Podcast. I have stopped the blog because it was getting too much work for just me. It was hard to come up with a blog post every week.
Yeah, my bad on that. I was trying to come up with some stuff. Okay. I did that one article, and then I had all these other things, but I've been getting wrapped up with my own stuff.
No worries, man. It like life gets in the way. But no, the website is still up though. You can read all those blog posts, stillloadingpodcast.com. And also check out the network I'm a part of, Podbeard Network, podbeardnetwork.com. Go check all that good stuff out. And shout out to my friend Erica. She is the host of the Apex in the Abyss, this great true crime podcast. She just started up a new podcast with her friends. She's taking a hiatus from Apex mainly because it's really depressing having to research serial killers. And she's doing a horror movie podcast called Monster Madness Podcast. You can just check it out, Monster Madness, on any of your podcatcher devices, podcatcher feeds. So that should be it. So thank you all once again for listening. Vin, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for letting me come on and talk about Luigi's Mansion and literally everything Nintendo. I feel like
I am having you back for a GameCube episode. Like,
that would be great.
So I did an N64 episode a little last year or so. I had my friend Mike on it who literally has every single game on the N64. He has a complete collection.
Real quick, do you want to know what I just found recently when we were at Too Many Games?
What?
In this game I was hunting for forever. The Legend of Mystical Ninjas Goemon's Adventure.
Okay.
That game is so damn hard to find. I had the first one.
What's it for?
The N64.
N64, okay.
The Goemon series is amazing. You should look into that. Have you ever heard of the Goemon series?
Only from the blog post that you wrote.
You should look into the Goemon series. It's great.
I'll have to check it out.
Definitely.
No, but I had him on for N64, so I will have you back on for GameCube. So
for sure.
I try to find people who are like the most passionate about a specific console, because consoles are a little bit more like you have to really know it to be able to talk about it. Like games, you can like know it, you can play and like you can play it before and maybe not remember it too well, but it's easy to refresh. Consoles is a much more like intensive knowledge type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert, but I mean, I'm not an
expert.
A lot of my younger years was GameCube, and then like some Dreamcast stuff, but like GameCube was definitely what I was playing the most.
Well, I will have you back on for that. And as per usual, thank you all once again for listening. That should do it for this episode. And I don't know what the next one's going to be, but I guess you'll find out when I do. So thank you all once again for listening, and I will see you all next time.